expect you to have the utmost discipline during this campaign. Do not interact with our people under the influence of alcohol. Do not smoke when you are talking to our people. Do not be violent when canvassing the votes and arguing our people to register to vote for the EFF. As of today, all of you in these election structures and all ground forces of South Africa, you are the ambassadors of the EFF, and in you, our people see us. You are our eyes and ears, and you must always know that wherever you are, you carry the pride and the dignity of our movement. Fellow fighters, for this campaign to be a success, we will need to speak to at least 10 million people who positively confirm that they will vote for the EFF in 2024. We must have the verified information of 10 million South African for whom we will be responsible to ensure they vote for the EFF and deliver this people's government in 2024. In order to speak to 10 million people, we will need registered and confirmed verified volunteers who are not less than 465,920. Those are the fighters who are category members of the EFF who have confirmed that indeed I am a volunteer of the EFF at this VD. It is not a plain thing that in the next month, all of these 465,000 volunteers of the EFF must have been registered and confirmed by the head office of the EFF one by one. Do not lie to the organization about the volunteers of the EFF. No one will be a volunteer of the EFF in a VD where you are not registered to vote. All of us must be volunteers in the VDs where we are registered to vote. These volunteers must be trained on the road to victory manual of the EFF. They must be orientated and educated on the policies of the EFF, and they must be of high character, discipline, and dedication as they are going to deliver the victory of the EFF. I'm speaking to you here, not worried about what is going to happen on the election day. What worries me is the day after the election day, because for me, I'm preparing for a victory day, not for the day of the elections. Fellow fighters, seated here today, you are all part and parcel of election structures of the EFF, which is in the main a product of the conversation of the constitutional structures of the movement. We have converted all of the EFF constitutional structures so that the central focus of all those who are now part of election task forces is elections and nothing else. Furthermore, the election task forces give us an opportunity to integrate dedicated fighters and volunteers into the elections machinery of the EFF and excuse those who may not be adding value at any particular point in time. All those who have been elected remain leaders of the EFF constitutionally, but your seats of being elected leaders will not be an excuse for you to be retained in our election machinery, even when you are not of value to our structures. Your role, comrades, is extremely important to the future of this country, and will not hesitate to request those who become obstacle to step aside and allow us to do our work. The Central Election Task Force is established by the Central Command Team as the central organ and high decision-making body of the EFF for purposes of election work. The Central Election Task Force holds the body of the EFF for the purpose of elections work. The Central Election Task Force holds the power to appoint and dismiss conveners, coordinators, and all other members of election task forces at all levels of the organization and may delegate such power to lower structures. The Central Election Task Force is convened by the President and the Commander-in-Chief and coordinated by Secretary General. The Central Election Task Force is composed of all members of the CCT, conveners and coordinators of provincial and regional election task forces. The CTF may invite experts and other skilled people to be permanent or temporary members of the CTF. The CTF meets bi-weekly or as and when it is needed. The provincial election task force are established by the Central Election Team, Central Command Team, and are responsible for the coordination of election work at the provincial level. The convener and coordinators of the PETFs are appointed by the Central Command Team and PCT members with specific functions and deployments constitute the entirety of the PTF. Regional and sub-regional conveners and coordinators of the election task forces are members of the PTF, and the PTFs meet bi-weekly or as and when it is needed. The regional election task forces are established by the Central Command Team and are responsible for the coordination of election work at the regional level. The conveners and coordinators of the RETFs are appointed by the Central Command Team, and RCT members with specific functions and deployments constitute the entirety of the RTF. Sub-regional conveners and coordinators of the election task forces are members of the RETF. The RETFs meet bi-weekly or as and when it is needed. The sub-regional election task forces are established by provincial election task forces and are comprised of all BTFs, conveners and coordinators, and sub-regional election task forces meet weekly or as and when it is needed. Branch election task forces are composed of the branch command team and ward command team of the EFF and necessarily all voting district conveners and coordinators. The BTFs are responsible for all election work at what level? Voting district election task forces, VDETFs, are established by BTFs and must have a minimum of 20 EFF ground forces who are strictly registered to vote in the designated voting district. VDETFs meet on daily basis to coordinate work for door-to-door, person-to-person, and intensify election campaigns. VDETF must designate its members as street and block or village coordinator responsible for the work of the organization in that particular street, block, or village. EFF party agents will strictly be recruited from members of the VDETFs, and VDETFs must have operation centers and must always report on election work. Street volunteers are members of the EFF who volunteer to do work for the EFF on daily basis and must report to VDETFs. All of these task forces have the responsibility of delivering the victory of the EFF by all means necessary. Fellow fighters, part of the lessons that are required in the quest for victory is the ability to self-sustain our own revolution. The successful 10th anniversary program held were part and parcel of the training ground we developed for the internal machinery of the EFF to self-sustain its own revolution. There is no election we are going to win if we do not have the ability to mobilize resources to strengthen our internal capacity as individual leaders of the EFF. The mistake that many tend to make when we refer to resources is to think that resources refers to money alone. But money is not the only resource that is required of a revolutionary. A revolutionary and a true representative of the people is able to organize an operation center within their community and does not expect the organization to pay for the sustainability of that operation center. A grassrooted activist who is in touch with critical stakeholders of society can mobilize food for volunteers, can mobilize transport for volunteers and for voters to voting stations without spending any money because you are in touch with society and its motive forces. We need these types of activists if we are to fulfill the mandate of our people, which is to win elections and deliver their freedom. There is no election we can win if amongst us there are those who practice dependency on EFF for every single task and responsibility that will deliver our victory. You must fundraise. You must do so in a creative and in a manner that will not jeopardize the organization, because the enemy is scared and is looking for anything to destroy the EFF before we achieve our moment in 2024. In your efforts to fundraise, protect the image of the EFF and do not do things that are illegal. You must always comply with the law and make sure that your donations, if they are beyond the threshold, they are declared. Please, if you want to make sure that you stay within the law, do not cross the threshold with one individual. When one individual is about to reach a threshold in his donations to the EFF, leave him alone and go to a different one so that you don't pass the threshold and you don't have the irritation of having to declare to white capital that established this law to want to monitor and compromise the EFF. Comrades, we were harsh with those who failed to organize transport for their constituencies to come to the EFF 10th anniversary rally, because that was a clear indication that they will not be able to rise to the occasion of 2024. And to keep them amongst us will be tantamount to a betrayal of our people. The instruction to organize these passes was not a financial exercise. It was a political and ideological test to all EFF public representatives. We were testing if you have the political capacity to organize for the movement. And we were testing if you have the ideological capacity to appreciate that you cannot go to a celebration of the movement while you leave those you claim to represent behind. The battlefield for 2024 will be unforgiving, and as a result, the EFF has to be unforgiving to those who do not have a political and ideological appreciation of the instruction we gave them. We stand here today knowing how many soldiers we have and what they can do. We stand here and declare better few than many who will make us plan with numbers that we do not have in reality and lead us into an ambush. We are here today strictly with dependable forces of the revolution. All of you who are seated here, you were vetted, and part of the vetting included whether you paid for a bus. And all of you have passed the vetting because you are dependable forces of our movement.